Hey, language lovers, ready to dive into some Spanish grammar?
I'm ready.
Great! Today, we're tackling Spanish possessives. With the help of Spanish teacher Jaime Lara's video, we're going to unpack all those mi casa and tu gato kind of phrases.
Awesome.
So by the end, you'll be using possessives like a pro.
Sounds good to me.
Now, before we jump into the nitty-gritty, let's make sure we're all on the same page with those basic Spanish pronouns.
Good idea.
You know, like yo, tú, él, ella, usted for singular.
Right.
And then the plural forms, nosotros, vosotros, ellos, ellas, ustedes.
Exactly. It's important to have those down because possessives build directly on those personal pronouns.
That makes sense. And I think Jaime pointed out something super interesting about accent marks here.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I know tu means you, but without that accent, tu becomes a possessive, meaning your.
It's a small detail, but a huge difference in meaning. Spanish is full of these little nuances.
So true. And those nuances are exactly what we're here to uncover. Now, Jaime introduces the possessive pronouns. Mi, tu, su.
Right. Then nuestro, vuestro, and then su again. Wait, why is su showing up twice?
That's a really common question.
It seems a little confusing at first.
Well, the singular su covers his, her, and the formal your.
Ah, so it's context dependent.
Exactly. And in the plural form, it also means their.
Wow. So su really does a lot of heavy lifting.
You got it. The context is everything when it comes to understanding which meaning of su is intended.
So like a linguistic chameleon.
I like that. It adapts to fit the situation.
Speaking of adapting, plurals and Spanish possessives seem pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, thankfully they are.
Hanoni says you just add an es to the end of the singular form.
Exactly. So mis, tus, sus, nice and simple.
Okay, I can handle that.
Yeah.
But then Jaime throws us a curveball with possessive adjectives, like mio mia, tuyo tuya, and so on. It seems like things are getting a bit more complex now.
They do have their own unique quirks.
What's the main thing to watch out for here?
The key difference is word order. In English, we say my car.
Yeah.
But in Spanish, you flip it. You mean like the car mine.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It would be el coche mío. The possessive adjective comes after the noun.
That's a pretty big switch from what we're used to in English.
It is. But once you get the hang of it, it feels very natural.
And Jaime gives us this golden rule about these possessive adjectives. They always go with the verb ser, which means to be.
Precisely.
Like in the example, este teléfono es suyo, for this phone is his or yours.
Exactly. And notice how we're back to suyo again.
Right. So just like the pronoun, the adjective form can also mean his, hers, yours, or theirs, depending on the context.
It can be tricky at first, but the more you see it in action, the easier it becomes to decipher.
I'm starting to realize that context is key here.
Absolutely. It's all about paying attention to the surrounding information to figure out who or what is being possessed.
Before we get too lost in all these pronouns and adjectives, Jaime mentions that Spanish sometimes uses articles instead of possessives.
Oh, yes. That's a really fascinating part. It seems a bit odd at first.
I was definitely surprised.
It mostly applies to body parts, clothing, and personal items.
Interesting.
Instead of using a possessive pronoun, you'd use a definite article, like el, la, los, or las.
So instead of saying my head hurts as me duele mi cabeza, you'd actually say me duele la cabeza, using that definite article la.
You got it. It's a subtle difference.
It really is.
But it highlights how Spanish views those things as being so closely connected to a person that you don't need to emphasize ownership with a possessive.
It's like saying your head is so inherently yours that we don't even need to mention it.
Exactly. It's a different way of thinking about the relationship between a person and those personal aspects.
That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of relationships, Jaime then dives into how Spanish expresses possession with numbers and groups.
That's where things get really interesting. It's all about using possessives to show part of a group. Like saying two of my friends would be dos de mis amigos.
Oh, I see. So it's almost like you're creating a mini equation there. Two out of my friends.
Exactly. It's a very precise way to express that relationship within the group.
That's really neat. And it seems like it's not just about friends, right? Jaime mentions this structure works for comparing quantities, too.
Absolutely. Like if you want to say one of their students speaks Spanish, you would use the same structure. Uno de sus estudiantes habla español.
It's fascinating how much information Spanish can pack into a seemingly simple phrase. But before we move on, we got to talk about the elephant in the room.
Oh, what's that?
Well, all this talk about suis and how it can be ambiguous, meaning his, hers, yours, or their. How do Spanish speakers actually avoid confusion in everyday conversations? I mean, that seems like it could get tricky.
It's a great question, and it really highlights a key difference between Spanish and English.
Okay, how so?
English relies heavily on distinct pronouns to avoid ambiguity, but Spanish often uses other strategies.
Like what? I'm dying to know how they navigate those tricky situations.
One common technique is adding a prepositional phrase for clarification.
Okay, that makes sense. Can you give me an example?
Sure, instead of just saying, su coche es rojo, which could mean anyone's car is red, you might add de él to specify his car, or de ella for her car.
So it's like adding those extra details to a painting to make it crystal clear who owns what?
Exactly, you're providing that extra layer of information without getting too wordy.
And it seems like a very elegant way to do it. It flows nicely. But wait, I think Jaime mentioned another strategy too, right?
You did. Spanish can also rely on context and just switch to the definite article instead.
Wait, you mean like using the instead of a possessive pronoun? How does that work?
Let's imagine you're talking about your friend Maria,
Okay.
and you want to say, Maria closed her book. In Spanish, you could simply say, Maria cerró el libro, using the definite article el before libro.
Ah, I see. Because we're already talking about Maria, it's understood that the book refers to her book.
Precisely. Context does a lot of the work here.
That's a very subtle but effective way to convey ownership. It sounds so much smoother and natural that way.
It does, doesn't it? Spanish possessives really are like a dance, finding the right moves to express the relationship between people and things.
I love that analogy, and it highlights how much context and shared understanding play a role in Spanish communication. Okay, so we've tackled the ambiguity of su, but I think Jaime also mentioned using possessive adjectives in a slightly different way.
Ah, yes. We've mostly focused on how possessive adjectives modify specific nouns, mi casa, tu gato, and so on.
Right.
But Spanish can also use them to express a quality or characteristic that belongs to someone.
Ah, you mean like when we say, that's so you, to describe someone's personality.
Exactly. Imagine your friend is known for their quirky sense of style.
I can picture it.
You could say, esa extravagancia es tan tuya, meaning that quirkiness is so typical of you. That possessive adjective tuya really emphasizes that this trait is an essential part of your friend's personality.
So it's like saying that quirkiness is so inherently theirs that it defines them.
You got it. And it's not just limited to personality traits. This structure can also express ownership of ideas or actions too.
Give me an example.
Sure. Like, esa idea fue mía means that idea was mine. Or el error fue nuestro means the mistake was ours.
So Spanish possessive adjectives can express ownership in so many ways, from concrete objects to abstract ideas to even personal characteristics.
And that brings up a crucial question. How does Spanish handle possessives when we're dealing with abstract nouns, like ideas, emotions, beliefs, that sort of thing?
That's a fascinating question. It seems like we're venturing into even deeper linguistic territory now. So how does Spanish handle those abstract nouns? It seems like things could get really complicated.
You know, it's actually more straightforward than you might think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Spanish uses a lot of the same pronouns and adjectives we've already talked about,
Okay.
but with a little twist.
I love a good twist.
Instead of saying, like, my opinion directly à vrai, you often use the preposition di to connect the noun with the possessor.
So instead of mi opinion, it would be
It would be la opinión de mí.
the opinion of me.
Exactly.
I see. But why not just use me in that case? It seems a little roundabout.
It's subtle, but it emphasizes the relationship between that abstract noun and the person.
So it's like saying, this opinion is specifically linked to me, not just any opinion.
You got it. And this structure is super common with lots of abstract ideas.
Like what?
Well, her fear would be el miedo de ella.
Okay.
Our happiness would be la felicidad de nosotros.
So it's like Spanish is using depril to connect those intangible concepts to the people who experience them.
Exactly. It creates that bridge between the abstract and the personal. Which brings us to another interesting point.
What's that?
Those intangible qualities that make us unique. Our personalities.
Oh, yeah, all our little quirks. Does Spanish have a way to express possession with those?
It does. Remember we talked about saying, that's so you.
Yeah, to describe someone's personality.
Well, Spanish uses possessive adjectives for that too.
Cool. How would you say that in Spanish?
Let's say your friend always has the most creative ideas. You could say, esa creatividad es tan tuya.
Which means?
That creativity is so typical of you. That tuya really emphasizes that it's an essential part of who they are.
It's like the language is acknowledging that their creativity is something that truly belongs to them.
Right. And you could do this with ideas and actions, too.
So like, that idea was mine would be,
Esa idea fue mía.
and the mistake was ours would be.
El error fue nuestro.
Wow, so Spanish possessives really are incredibly versatile.
They are. You can express ownership in so many ways, from concrete objects to abstract ideas to those things that make us, well, us.
I'm honestly blown away. This whole deep dive has been eye-opening. I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of how Spanish works now. It makes me wonder about language and culture.
In what way?
Well, we've seen that Spanish approaches these possessives differently than English, especially with body parts and abstract things. Do you think that reflects a different way of thinking about the world?
That's a really interesting thought. It highlights how language isn't just about grammar rules. It's a reflection of culture, values, even ways of seeing the world.
Exactly. And that's a perfect note to end on, I think.
I agree.
Learning a new language isn't just about being able to communicate, it's about understanding another culture and broadening your own perspective.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep discovering the wonders of language. Until next time, adios.